So we're actually left off discussing about all the basic data, the 9 data types inside the integral category. Now the integral category that we are going to, although we have finished about talking about the integral category, the last thing that we left off in the previous lesson or the previous video was that we wanted to talk about the character literal. So what is this actually, what is this character literal? Character literals are like extended characters. Whenever you want to do a simple something, you want to do something simple, like for example, let's take the example that you want to print a line, you want to print a sentence, and then you want the compiler to print the next sentence below the first sentence, but you really don't want to do that using codes inside your script, because that might be tedious or repetitive. So using a simple escape sequence character, we can easily tell the compiler with that character that Mr. Compiler, please print this second sentence below the first sentence, and that simple escape sequence will handle all this behind the scenes rather than us doing it the hard way. So let's actually look at a demonstration using all these 6 escape sequences. So basically there are 6 escape sequences. One is like the tab escape sequence, the new line escape sequence, then the single quote, then the double quotes, then we also have the backslash escape sequence, and obviously there are several others, but I won't be listing all of them, but I'll be showing you the basic 6 that we'll be looking into, and that will be that will repeatedly use inside many of our examples in later chapters. So let's actually create one new file rather than talking about all these escape sequences. Let's choose this, and now what we have done before is was that we only took the empty file. So if you click on any one of them, you'll actually see this simple description changing for different contexts. Now when we click on the class, we see when we want to create this class template, we see that it's an empty class declaration. So what it tells us is that we actually created, although I haven't explained what a class is, what a method is, what a constructor is. It might be will actually require several chapters before we can understand fully all those concepts, because they are intermediate concepts and we'll be requiring them in our advanced topics when we want to create suppose a Windows application or a Windows ASP. It might be an ASP.NET web application. So we will need those advanced intermediate topics in our advanced discussion. But for now, let's actually stick on to this class declaration, and we'll, rather than taking this empty file or creating the class, why not actually tell sharp develop to create that empty class for us. So let's actually create this, and in here we are presented with a lot of different stuff, like the namespace. I haven't talked about this namespace. I'll be talking about it in later chapter, so stay tuned. And we did talk about this this character that's actually unique in C#. This is this will be converted to an to a XML to a XML document if we want to, but we really don't want any of this, so let's erase this off. But we will need the system namespace because our functions or methods are contained inside it. And let's erase this ending curly brace. So your curly braces must match. So whenever you click onto this curly brace, that's an opening for this curly brace is an opening for the class that the sharp developed has created for us. Whenever you click right beside this first curly brace, you see that it's being enclosed with the ending curly brace. So this is a correct form of declaring a class. Now inside this class we have got a method or a function. this function will be changing this because we don't need this constructor function. This is actually a constructor. We won't be talking about that right now, but let's follow along. And our main focus in this lesson is about the character literals. So let's create the main method. So the main method is actually like the brain of an application. Every application needs to have this. When our advanced topics, when we talk about delegates, when we talk about creating a Windows application, a real life application, or maybe a real life simple application, we'll also see how to actually change this method into a simpler method. So stay along, and I hope you'll be watching all those series, and I'll try to publish them as soon as possible. So let's actually create two new variables, letter1, and this letter1 will be having the character of A. Let's create another variable. So let's actually discuss about this briefly. We have talked about the char or a char data type previously, but I haven't shown you any real life demonstration or a real life example. So in here, what we have done, if you remember clearly, that we have declared and initialized the variable with the identifiers of letter1 and letter2 with their own values of A, the character A, the single uppercase character A, or capital letter A, and the single uppercase capital letter B. So what we have done in here, we have used the char or a char data type, and we have told the compiler that we are going to store a single character using this char data type inside this variable that we named letter A. And we have also similarly created another character data typed variable that we named as letter2, and this will be storing the character which is the uppercase B. Now there is another there is actually a little if you actually hover over this green underlined identifiers, then you'll see that the IntelliSense of this sharp developed, I guess they don't call it IntelliSense. IntelliSense is actually, this is the name used inside Microsoft Visual Studio. If you're using Express or if you're using Ultimate, then you'll see IntelliSense perfectly working inside and helping whenever you need it. But in sharp developed, I really don't know what they call it, but let's assume that it's also like that IntelliSense, because it's actually helping us to rewrite our code or make it more efficient. But for this example, we really don't need to convert this to a constant. It's actually telling us to convert this into a constant. We'll be looking at what a constant is when we reach the end of this chapter. Now let's actually stick to this. Now what we have done is we created these two variables with the character data types. Now there's another data type that I haven't spoken about, which is known as the string data type. Now the string data type is used to store textual values. Now in here, the difference between a string and a character data type is that inside the character data type you can store single characters, but suppose you want to store a full sentence, maybe you really want to store two sentences inside a variable because you want to use them later, you want to use them in several places inside your program whenever the program is executing. So you really don't want to repeat that sentences whenever you want to use them. So you want to store them inside a variable for later usage. So for that purpose, we need a string data type. So how do we create a string data type? Let's look at it. So we first need to use this string data type declaration, and then let's create a variable using the string data type, and let's store one sentence, one complete sentence. So let's write this example is about escape sequences. So what we have done in here is that you can clearly see the difference in here. In a character when we want to store a character inside this character data type, or this variable that has the type of char or character, we are using a single quotes, and we are actually storing a single character inside this variable. Now in a string data typed variable, we are not storing a single character, we are storing one complete sentence. You can actually store one complete paragraph inside one variable, but I really don't recommend that because it's going to take up a lot of space. Maybe it might be wasting, but you can actually do that if it's absolutely necessary, but otherwise don't go for it. Now in here what we see is a complete sentence. We are storing one complete sentence inside double quotation marks, and our variable is called text1. So remember that whenever you want to store one single character, use the character data type with the single quotes, and whenever you want to store textual data like a complete sentence, use the string data type with double quotes. So that's the basic difference in between them, and because of the nature, the string data type can store more than the character data type because it has a larger memory allocation. It has got a larger space inside our computer's memory. Now let's actually move on to our major focus for this lesson. We are going to talk. We started talking about the escape sequence. So let's actually use the console write line method, and we're going to use the variable that we just created. We're going to use the string variable, and we have passed it inside this the write line method. And this is nothing new. What it will do is that it will just check the compiler when it's executing the code at runtime. It will first check whether this text1 actually exists. So if it really exists, then it will replace this text1 with its value that we have initialized in the first place. So if you really if you really remember, what we're doing in here is that we are actually combining the variable declaration with the variable initialization in one single statement. We're not using two separate statements. Now let's actually use a specifier. Now we are going to look at the usage or the behavior of these escape sequences.